In a remote Alaskan town surrounded by tundra and icy sea, people have vanished for decades without a trace. Boats capsize, snowmobiles disappear into open water, and residents step into the night never to return. Official explanations point to weather, wilderness, and alcohol, but the pattern has left the community shaken. In this episode, we follow the chilling string of disappearances that turned an isolated coastal town into one of the most unsettling mysteries in the North. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jolynn. Every file holds a mystery, every story deserves to be heard. This is the story of the unexplained disappearances in Nome, Alaska. Long before the headlines about the unsolved disappearances, Nome had built a reputation as one of Alaska's most intense frontier towns. During the gold rush in the early 1900s, Nome's population exploded almost overnight as thousands of hopeful prospectors were drawn in. The rapid growth brought lawlessness, harsh living conditions, and a constant fight for survival in one of the country's most extreme climates. Home to fewer than 4,000 people, this remote Alaskan town sits along the rugged western coast and is surrounded by vast tundra and icy waters. It is known for winters so severe that from November through March, temperatures regularly fall well below zero, sometimes even plunging to 50 below. Nome is also very isolated. There are no roads connecting Nome to the rest of Alaska. The only way in or out of town is by plane or seasonal barge, which means the residents are truly cut off for much of the year. By the start of the 1960s, Nome's reputation had shifted. Once known for its fierce spirit, it gradually became defined by the unsettling stories of unexplained disappearances that transformed it into one of Alaska's most haunting destinations. Between the 1960s and early 2000s, Nome became known for a troubling pattern. Several residents vanished under unusual circumstances. In total, roughly 24 cases were reported over several decades. At first glance, the disappearances seemed difficult to explain. Some individuals were last seen leaving bars or gatherings, while others simply never returned home. And with the vast wilderness surrounding the town, searches were often challenging. The earliest case I could find is the disappearance of 37-year-old Mitchell Joseph Teven. Mitchell moved to Nome, Alaska around 1965 and may also have spent time in the Fairbanks area. He routinely sent letters to his family, but the correspondence stopped around 1973 and no one has seen or heard from him since. The exact date of his disappearance is unclear and very few details are available. A man named Mitchell J. Teven, born in Ohio in 1935, has an extensive criminal history. In 1957, he was acquitted of robbery, and the following year he was injured in a fight. Shortly after, he accidentally shot himself in the leg. In 1959, he was charged with transporting women for prostitution and was convicted. In 1963, he was charged with armed robbery. It's unclear whether this Mitchell J. Teven is the same man who later went missing in Nome, but many believe they are one and the same, and that he relocated to Alaska to start over. If that's true, the troubles followed him north. On the evening of February 21, 1967, Mitchell stole a lighter from the pocket of a man passed out in a bar. In 1969, he was convicted of attempted larceny and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Many believe Mitchell became involved with the wrong crowd in Nome and ultimately met with foul play. A few years later, 57-year-old Ward Olana was last seen in Nome on August 8, 1984. Ward lived in a small village about 60 miles to the north of Nome. On September 10, 1984, Reuben Rock, another resident of the village, was charged with first-degree murder in Ward's case. He was later convicted of second-degree murder. He was the last known person to have seen Ward, and prosecutors believed he stabbed him in the chest during an argument, though Ward's body has never been found. On September 23, 1987, while returning home from Anchorage, 24-year-old Ernest Zacchaeus stopped in Nome for the evening. He was last seen leaving the Polaris Hotel to get some drinks and never returned. His DNA was later compared to 4 unidentified individuals, but no match was found, and he was eventually declared legally dead. 5 months later, on February 20th, 1988, 73-year-old Jerome Trigg was on a snowmobile that broke through the sea ice. His body was never recovered, but there are no other details available in his case. On August 29, 1989, 34-year-old Robert Driscoll Jr. disappeared during a boating trip. Despite searches of the water, his body has not been found. On November 18, 1990, 45-year-old Justina Kuniak was passing through Nome after a doctor's appointment in Anchorage. She was last seen walking down Front Street near the Nome Nugget Inn. Her family says they received no support during their search for Justina. Her daughter recalled, quote, "One day the police stopped me and my sister and asked us what we were doing. We said we're looking for our mom. She never came home and it's been a week." The police took her mom's picture and told them they would help, but when the FBI arrived, Justina's photo wasn't even in the Nome Police Department's file. Justina's family continues their search and hopes one day they will find answers. A few months later, in February 1991, 36-year-old Robert Tutkalok vanished while traveling from Nome to Solomon. He was last seen either on February 17th or 18th. When he failed to arrive in Solomon, concern quickly mounted. Despite extensive search efforts, no trace of Robert was found until May 21, 1991, when his snowmobile was discovered half a mile west of the Bonanza Creek Bridge in Norton Sound. The discovery raised more questions than answered and marked the beginning of a decades-long mystery. A year and a half later, 37-year-old Roy Scanez disappeared on September 1, 1992, after the skiff he was in capsized. No trace of him has ever been found, and it is presumed he drowned. On October 21, 1994, 29-year-old Kevin Murray was last seen on Nome's Pier. He disappeared shortly after and has never been heard from again. On September 7, 1995, 16 researchers were on an expedition to compare Alaskan and Siberian native communities. The scientists hope to learn about connections between the groups that might shed light on issues such as alcoholism, fetal alcohol syndrome, child abuse, winter depression, and suicide. Tragically, their walrus skin boat capsized and 14 people drowned. 2 remain missing, 53-year-old William Richards and 43-year-old Richard Condon. 5 village whale hunters in a second boat also drowned, though there is no known connection between the 2 boats. 3 years later, Jean Ozina, Jason Ozina, Emery Omiak, Mary Milligrock, Melvin Kai-Uktuk, and Kevin Moyak disappeared on August 27, 1998, during a routine boat trip from Wales to Little Diomede Island. The group was last seen navigating the treacherous waters of the Bering Strait, a region notorious for its unpredictable weather and strong currents. Despite extensive search efforts, no trace of the boat or its 6 passengers was ever found. Later that year, on October 18, 1998, 49-year-old Archie Henry Jr. disappeared while visiting family in Nome. He was last seen in a relative's home in the living room, specifically on the evening of October 18th. He left behind a wife and 3 children. On December 27, 2000, 15-year-old Garrett Zacchaeus and 14-year-old Belinda Smith were traveling on snowmobiles when they vanished. Tracks led out into the ice and into the open water. Extensive searches of the area were unsuccessful in locating the 2 teens. On August 16, 2002, 41-year-old Randall Petty disappeared after going overboard from his tug near St. Michael. No other details are known. In October 2004, 21-year-old Eric Apatiki traveled to Nome from St. Lawrence Island to visit his pregnant girlfriend and cash his permanent dividend fund check. He planned to return to his home village a few days later. On October 5th, he was staying in the Polaris Hotel with his mother. According to his mother, 4 young men who were from other villages came into their hotel room at about midnight and dragged Eric out onto the street. They beat him and he ran away. He was never heard from again. The next disappearances involve 38-year-old Jason Naupakahak, his 11-year-old daughter Yolanda, and his 11-year-old nephew Leonard. They were participating in a whale hunt, a tradition that stretches back countless generations in their community. On April 26, 2005, around 8 p.m., the crew killed a 44-foot whale. All the boats joined in to help tow it back to their village. But as the sun set late Tuesday evening, the wind shifted direction and began blowing in stronger gusts. Waves rose to 8 feet, whitecaps formed, and spray battered the whalers. At around 2 a.m. on Wednesday, Jason cut loose from the tow line. He called out to another boat, saying theirs was taking on water and they were heading home to switch vessels. What happened next is unclear. Jason used his CB radio to call for help, but the only whaler who heard him was already occupied towing the whale. The other captains couldn't hear his call over the wind and engine noise, but villagers back home did. They tried to launch a rescue, but the storm forced them to turn back. The storm had capsized Jason's walrus skin boat, which was carrying 6 people. One Alaska State Trooper boat responded to the distress call. Somehow, in the darkness and violent seas, rescuers located 2 men clinging to the overturned boat and another floating nearby. All 3 were transported to the hospital, where 1 later died. Rescuers spent hours searching for Jason and the missing children, but found no trace. No one on board had been wearing life jackets, and experts say most people would survive only 15 minutes in the near-freezing water. The villagers were stunned by the loss of 4 community members. One villager said, quote, "We always say that whenever they catch a whale, a way home will be provided. That's what's always happened before." But not this time. The last disappearance is that of 6-year-old Sonia Ozena. On May 21, 2005, Sonia was playing on the ice with 3 other children when she broke through and fell into the water. Her boots were recovered, but despite extensive searches, she never was. After several disappearances, the community feared the worst, and rumors spread that a serial killer might be living among them. In 2005, the FBI reviewed the missing persons cases and concluded that there were many linked to a combination of excessive alcohol consumption and exposure to the brutal, unforgiving climate. Since 1966, 24 people have gone missing. Of those cases, 19 had definitive outcomes that did not appear to involve criminal activity. Despite the FBI's reassurance and the official findings, residents of the small town remained uneasy. People were still disappearing, and the fear never fully faded. On December 20th, 2010, 55-year-old John Kazuna left a note at his family's cabin indicating that he was going to walk to Nome. The cabin sits near Woolly Lagoon on the edge of the Bering Sea. He had 2 possible routes, a 37-mile walk along the coast or a 50-mile trek along the highway back to town. John was known for making long treks. He knew the terrain well and would have been prepared for the elements. But his family didn't realize he was missing until December 27th, and by then the region had been hit with 2 major winter storms that brought severe conditions. Searchers were unsure whether John took the coastal route or the highway, though the search focused on the coast. An airplane scanned from above while snowmobiles checked nearby cabins. Ground teams also searched drainages John might have wandered into during a blizzard. Despite the extensive effort, he was never found. On June 24, 2016, 36-year-old Joseph Balderas was last seen. 3 days later, he was reported missing by a colleague after he failed to show up for work as a law clerk, something that was completely out of character for him. Joseph never missed work without calling or texting. The same day, his truck was found abandoned on the highway. It was unlocked, and inside was a backpack containing fishing gear, waders, and boots. Authorities believed he may have been hiking or running in the area. Nome Search and Rescue and the U.S. Coast Guard searched for him for several days, but no trace was found. On July 6, the search was suspended. Police revealed troubling inconsistencies in the statements of Joseph's roommate, Jake Stettin-Benz. Jake initially told authorities that he had gone bridge jumping with friends Emery and Tyler on the afternoon of Saturday, June 25th. But cell phone data collected on July 4th showed Jake texting Emery and Tyler, admitting he had used them in a story for the state trooper. Jake told them he had told police that after the three went bridge jumping, they drove to Solomon and returned at 1 a.m. Emery replied, quote, "I honestly don't remember that day at all." Jake told Emery he didn't either, which is why he told police that story and then apologized. Tyler later texted Jake, quote, "But you weren't even with me. You were with Cam and Cass, and I slept in my cabin." When confronted with the conflicting accounts, Jake admitted that he fabricated the story about driving to Solomon. He said he had little prior contact with police and was nervous. On July 8th, officers questioned Jake about fresh scrapes on his face and arms. He claimed he got them playing football with a friend on June 30th, after Joseph had already been reported missing. Police searched the home Jake and Joseph shared and reported there were no indications of foul play inside the residence. Theories circulated that Joseph was attacked by a bear or died by suicide, but a private investigator hired by the family has dismissed both possibilities, saying, quote, "Typically, if there was a bear attack, there would be evidence of it. With the number of people that they had out there on foot, on four-wheelers, in the air, and with scent dogs, it just seems like that's less likely." After a thorough investigation and multiple interviews with friends and family, the private investigator also believes suicide is unlikely, saying, quote, "It seemed very unlikely because everyone I interviewed talked about his personality and all the plans that he had. He was within weeks of moving to Juneau to set up a law practice and marry his fiancée. Joseph's sister Selena told Dateline, quote, "He was a smart one, and that's the thing that's sad, is that we feel like if one of us would have been missing, he would have been the perfect one to find us. He wouldn't have quit, and he would have found us, found what happened, or kept trying." The family is offering a $25,000 reward for information leading to a successful resolution in the case. At 2 a.m. on June 11, 2017, 23-year-old Timothy Milogrog and 14-year-old Damian Suluk launched a small wooden boat. It appeared that they were heading out for a quick trip along the coast, but just 30 minutes after leaving land that Sunday morning, residents of the village heard them both yelling for help. A village volunteer search and rescue group, joined by the Coast Guard, searched in fog, wind, and ice, but found nothing. Timothy, the son of missing Mary Milogrog, was found a month later. Local villagers recovered debris from the boat, but Damien was never found. Many believe he was taken forever by the ocean. While fishing with family members on October 26, 2018, 56-year-old Anthony Shelp fell overboard in waters off Nome. Family members attempted to pull him back into the vessel but were unsuccessful. The U.S. Coast Guard and Nome Search and Rescue searched by boat and helicopter but were unable to find any sign of Anthony. When the Coast Guard arrived on scene, conditions included a water temperature of 43 degrees, 20-mile-per-hour winds, and 5-foot seas. The Coast Guard noted the dangers of the situation, saying, quote, "When a person goes into cold water with no life jacket, our chances of finding them alive are vastly diminished." U.S. Coast Guard crews searched a total of 41 square nautical miles for more than 5 hours, but at 7 p.m., the search was suspended. Alaska State Trooper said alcohol was a reported factor in the incident. 2 years after Anthony disappeared into the unforgiving sea, 33-year-old Florence Oplock vanished on August 31, 2020. Florence had moved to Nome in 2013 from Wales, Alaska, a village about 100 miles northwest of Nome. She was last seen leaving a tent on West Beach just outside of town around 4 p.m. The area is well known as a summer camp for gold miners. A community search began shortly after she went missing, but her cousin Billy said the response from the Nome Police Department was slow and dismissive. She remembers calling the city of Nome 2 days after Florence disappeared to ask whether there was a coordinated search effort. She was laughed at. According to her, the Nome Volunteer Fire Department search and rescue team didn't begin searching until day 4 because it was moose hunting season. Florence's sister Blair also spoke about the insufficient response from authorities, saying, "Where was our help? Where? If you knew Flo, she would take the shirt off her back for you. She loved you with her whole heart. She was important. She mattered. Our family wants to know what happened to her." Searches were eventually conducted by the Nome Police Department, FBI, Alaska State Troopers, the Nome Volunteer Fire Department Search and Rescue Team, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Her shoes, socks, and jacket were recovered by authorities, but there has been no sign of her. The last documented disappearance occurred on the evening of October 15, 2020, when the mining vessel capsized offshore in rough seas. The 3 people aboard had been mining since October 9th and were on their way back to Nome when a rogue wave struck their vessel. One miner was thrown overboard, the life raft was deployed, and he used all his strength to climb into it. He then tossed wetsuits to the 2 remaining miners still on board. He estimated that he drifted into the stormy sea for about an hour before reaching the beach, where he managed to get out, make it to the road, and flag down a passing motorist. Nome Search and Rescue responded with 25 volunteers who scoured the beach and checked cabins along the coast to see if the miners had made it ashore. At 11:45 p.m., the boat washed up, but it was still too far in the surf zone for volunteers to safely reach. The coastline was littered with mining gear, the life raft, gold pans, wetsuits, and flotation devices. Winds were blowing 25 to 35 miles per hour, and the water was too rough to launch boats. The Coast Guard responded by sending an airplane and helicopter into the night. They searched the area but found nothing. On Friday morning, after daybreak, search and rescue volunteers returned and found the boat closer to shore. They managed to pull it in, but no one was on board. With disappearances nearing 3 dozen and the FBI offering no satisfying explanation, locals again began searching for answers. UFO sightings are regularly reported in the Nome region, and some ufologists believe the area may serve as a command center for alien life on Earth. The film, The Fourth Kind, is based on this conspiracy theory and portrays people being abducted by aliens in Nome. In 2009, Universal Pictures paid a settlement after creating fake news articles to promote the film, which they marketed as a documentary. The fabricated reports included an obituary and news story supposedly taken from the Fairbanks Daily News Miner about the death of one of the movie's fictional characters, Dr. William Tyler. But the damage was already done. The false news articles went viral, and thousands of people continue to believe they were real. UFO enthusiasts argue that Nome's isolated wilderness has made it a hotspot for alien abductions. A more grounded explanation is that the vast, unforgiving landscape provides countless ways for people to vanish without a trace. But perhaps something more sinister is happening in Nome. On the evening of Sunday, August 10, 2003, 18-year-old Timmarie Torek and her roommate 19-year-old Sonia Ivanov went to a friend's house to play board games. Around 1 a.m., Timmarie noticed how late it was and decided she needed to sleep since she had to be up for work in just 6 hours. The girls didn't have a car and got around entirely on foot. Timmarie chose to stay at the friend's house, but Sonia had Mondays off and decided to walk home alone. Timmarie walked her outside into the misty night rain, and after they said goodbye, Sonia continued down the street toward their apartment. Around 5 a.m., Timmarie returned home to get ready for work. Sonia's bed was empty, but she assumed that Sonia had stayed with another friend. She went to work expecting to hear from her later. But when Sonia still hadn't returned by that evening, Timmarie reported her missing to the Nome Police Department. At 8:30 p.m. on August 12th, a volunteer firefighter followed fresh tire tracks down a rarely used road and discovered Sonia's naked body. She had been shot once in the back of the head and was covered in bruises. State investigators were called in, but it took some time for them to reach the scene. While they waited, the Nome Police Department covered the area with tarps and took shifts guarding the site. When investigators arrived, they found Sonia laying near a pool of blood. A vehicle had driven through it, leaving a distinct set of tire tracks. One tread was different, suggesting mismatched tires. They also found a smear of light blue paint on some nearby foliage. Timmerie insisted Sonia had no enemies. She had moved to Nome from a small Alaskan village after graduating from high school in 2002. The outgoing teen worked at the admitting desk of the local hospital and quickly made friends. Investigators began looking closely at those who knew Sonia, including a male friend known as Canuck. He drove a blue truck with mismatched tires, and investigators found blood inside the truck, on a tarp, and on the butt of a rifle. But he said he had been 70 miles away hunting with friends on the night Sonia was killed. The blood was determined to be from an animal, and the tires did not match the impressions at the scene. Investigators later learned that the tire marks came from an unsuspecting couple who had driven down the road without noticing the body. That left investigators with few leads, until a Nome police officer discovered a tip that had never been followed up on. A woman named Florence Habros said she had been smoking on her porch with her sister around 1:26 a.m. when she saw Sonia walk by. Moments later, a Nome police SUV pulled up beside her. After speaking with the driver for about a minute, Sonia got into the passenger seat and the SUV drove off. Only 2 officers were on duty that night, Stan Piscoya and Matthew Owens. Just before both men were scheduled to fly to Anchorage to give statements, Cruiser 321, one of the only 3 police vehicles, disappeared. Owens claimed he found the vehicle at Bessie Pit, not far from the crime scene. He said someone had gotten out of it, opened fire, and then fled into the tundra. Inside the vehicle was an ominous note addressed to pigs, along with one of Sonia's IDs. I hate cops. I hate every one of you. Sonia was just a person in the wrong place at the wrong time. I do not know her. As you can see, it was easy for me to take your pig car keys right there. It's not her fault. She thought I was a pig and shit just happened. Every one of you should be more careful. I watch every move you make. You leave me alone and I leave you alone. I will also shoot you in the head if you get close. Trooper investigator Eric Burrows doubted the note was genuine. He believed Sonia would not have gotten into the SUV unless she recognized the officer, and that the note was written to mislead investigators. Both officers denied involvement, but the investigation revealed troubling behavior from Owens. He was known to pick up civilians, especially women, during his shifts. He was unaccounted for during a critical window of time that morning and failed a lie detector test. Owens was fired and arrested. Afterward, several women came forward saying he had picked them up in his police SUV and sexually assaulted them, threatening that no one would believe them. Owens' ex-wife also told police he had called her asking her to take their son because, quote, a girl had gone missing. This was said before Sonia had even been reported missing. Investigators searched a hunting camp Owens frequented. In a burn pit, they found an eyelet from a shoe matching the brand Sonia wore that night, along with a charred button from her jeans. Authorities believed Owens had taken a gun from the evidence room to commit the murder and then returned it, though they could never prove it definitively. The first trial was contentious, and the judge declared a mistrial after jurors could not reach a verdict. Owens was convicted of first-degree murder in a second trial. While rumors of a serial killer cop spread quickly, official investigators paint a far less mysterious picture. Authorities have found no evidence of a serial killer or any organized pattern of violence. Instead, many of the disappearances were linked to factors that are, unfortunately, common in a remote and extreme environment, such as alcohol use, exposure to severe cold, and the dangers of navigating unfamiliar terrain in harsh conditions. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the disappearances in Nome, Alaska. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media, and join me next week as I dive into another case.